فريدا كن فريدا عش بفخر في الحياة لا تبالي فالمعالي.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is your brother Boonaa Mohammed on another episode of Hangout, where we literally hang out. And we have great guests and speakers, and today is no exception. We have with us Sheikh Musleh Khan. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
How's everything?
I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, jazakallah khair for joining us. I've heard a lot of great interesting things about you. I know you, but one thing that's always intrigued me is that you used to do like full-time ruqya.
Yeah,
okay,
that's
so
right.
you were like a full-time exorcist.
Yeah.
Now that's an interesting profession, right? That's an interesting way of life, I guess you could say. Can you describe, what that experience was like, how you got into it, and all of that?
Man, it's pretty crazy. Actually, I was sitting in Medina, myself and my roommates, and we just woke up one day. We both had bad dreams, and we just decided, you know what? That was a really scary dream. We need to learn ruqya just for ourselves.
Just to do to each other.
Just to do to each other, and
Okay.
if one of us gets scared or can't sleep, one of us will perform ruqya on the other.
Okay.
And that was it. I went to my teacher. It just so happened that one of my teachers who was teaching me Arabic was like a professional exorcist. I think he must have wrote like a whole ton of books on exorcism alone.
Oh, wow.
So I just went up to him and I said, Sheikh, could you teach me ruqya? And before I thought he was going to do ruqya on me or something, he just says, yeah, sure, no problem. Bring this these books, and then I'll teach them all to you. And that was it. And before you know it, he started teaching me. And for literally 2 years, I was just engulfed in ruqya. For 2 years, all throughout the day and night. 2 o'clock in the morning, he's called me. He's like, yeah, let's go to this hospital. Let's go perform ruqya on this person.
Wow.
Let's go to this person's house. So that was kind of an adventure.
So can you talk to me about the lifestyle now? I mean, it's like people talk about being a raqi. It's kind of like being a ghostbuster, like you got these calls and then you got to zoom off in the middle of the night and capture these people and I mean, without making it into a joke, it is quite a serious thing and it can be quite scary as well.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever have these instances where you were like very scared?
Boonaa, you don't even want to know. Okay?
Is it that bad?
It was really, really bad. I gotta tell you, my respect for people who do this kind of work went through the roof because, for one, you gotta have your iman really, really strong. So like you're praying tahajjud every night, you're fasting every night, you're doing all of these different acts of worship that generally people might miss here and there. So you have to be really consistent. You have to know your Quran well. You basically have to be on guard all the time, 24 hours, because you might take out a jinn from somebody, and at that moment where you're feeling a bit weak, this jinn will just come out of nowhere and attack you.
SubhanAllah.
So that was one stress behind the job itself. And then secondly, it was overwhelming because there's very few people that do this work. So all day and night, you're getting calls, you're getting text messages, you're getting calls from people saying, can you do ruqya with me over the cell phone and things like that. It was crazy. So it was just so overwhelming and so difficult to uphold that kind of work. Wallahi, my respect for people who do that just went through the roof.
Any stories in particular, anything that you can recall, like an interesting incident or something that really kind of, tripped you out?
Oh yeah, here's one of the craziest ones I got, okay? So my sheikh calls me at after dhuhr one day. So it's the brightest time of the day, and usually in Medina, nobody goes out during that time. They usually stay indoors because it's just so hot. So he calls me and he says, look, there's a lady that needs our help. So we get in the car, we drive over to the lady's house and we knock on the door and nobody's answering the door. So as we're knocking, we just check the knob and we notice that the door is open to her house. So my sheikh ironically says, okay, Musleh, go inside.
That's it, huh?
It's crazy. And he's like, okay, well, thanks a lot. So I go inside and I'm saying, Salaam alaikum, hello, hello, and I can't hear nobody. So I say to the sheikh, there's nobody at home. Then all of a sudden when I say that to him, I hear like somebody scratching a wall or something moving upstairs.
Okay.
So the sheikh says, she's not here, she's upstairs. Musleh, go upstairs and check it out.
Wow.
So I go upstairs, I see that all the bedroom doors are open except one of them, and she's in there. So we knock on this door that's closed and we can hear movement. Again, we check the knob and it's open. So we just warn her. We said, look, we're coming in, we're coming in. We open the door and the lady is sitting on the floor and she's just in her pajamas. So we turn our faces away and we ask her, we said, look, you called us to come over and you're not even covered properly. She says to us, please forgive me, but I'm trying to get my abaya and it keeps running away from me. So the abaya was, this jinn was playing games with her and just kind of moving her abaya all over the place, just trying to expose her.
Okay.
Eventually what happened is that jinn possessed her in front of me and the sheikh. We asked the jinn, I said, look, what are you doing? What's your problem? Why are you here? So the jinn said, look, what this lady was doing, she was cooking in her kitchen, and you know how you have like boiling water that's left over at the pot?
Yeah.
And usually when you're cooking, you just throw this water in the sink. She didn't do that. She took that pot of water and she went to the washroom and she threw it down the toilet bowl. I guess it was a lot of water or whatever, right? So when she did that, there was actually a family of jinns living inside of her toilet bowl.
Okay.
So we asked the jinn, okay, so what's the problem here? She says, so when she threw that water down in the toilet bowl, it killed one of my children.
SubhanAllah.
So we asked the jinn, we said, well, how is she supposed to know you guys were in the toilet bowl? You shouldn't have been there in the first place. And here's the most amazing thing about the story. The jinn says, had she just said Bismillah, at least before entering the washroom, had she just said Bismillah, we would have heard it, and I would have picked up my children and left that toilet bowl and never returned to this house again.
SubhanAllah.
It was just crazy. The simplest things we do.
That's crazy. So, okay, now, people that are just tuning in, you know, just to get a better understanding. So, you can talk to a jinn through somebody.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, let's just like put that into context now. So, you're speaking now with a jinn which is, you know, a different life form. It's it's a being made from a smokeless flame, okay? And it's something that we can't see, right? So just go through the process now. How is it that, for instance, somebody can become possessed, and what's the process by which they can actually communicate through somebody?
Well, look, you know, we know that jinns talk, and the reason why is that just simply standing in front of somebody who is possessed, or at least potentially looks like they're possessed, their behaviors will change. There are a lot of physical features about that person that will be so different that those who know him or her, they can recognize, wait a minute, you don't look like yourself today. Something is not right. There's like these distinct features about that individual that's changed. Then the most obvious giveaway is going to be the voice. So you'll have a girl who speaks to you, but she'll sound like some old man with a deep, strong voice, and you know she's never spoken like that before.
Right.
So these are just jinns that possess, and they use whatever powers and abilities they have, they're able to speak through this individual. And the person who's doing the talking, so the actual human being himself, they know that they're speaking, but their conscience is just not there. They're not really aware of what this jinn is trying to say or how it's using them. So they literally sort of snap out of it for that brief moment. The jinn takes over, does what he needs to do, and comes out of it. The bottom line is no one really knows how this works. You know, this jinn world is a separate entity by itself, so nobody knows how it works. We just have very, very few information about them.
So why would a jinn want to possess a human being? Like, what pleasure does the jinn get out of it?
Okay, well, this is the golden question, right? There's a number of reasons, actually. A lot of it has to do with just pure foolishness. I mean, you have to remember that how all of this started is, remember the story about Iblis? He didn't want to prostrate. Now, normally when you ask people, well, why didn't he want to prostrate? People will say, because he was jealous. What's jealousy? Jealousy is literally some sort of like inferiority complex in someone. Like, I'm jealous that you were preferred over me. That doesn't change the fact that they were still preferred, that mankind were preferred for that sajda. So from that point until now, Iblis and his followers are literally upset and they hate human beings. Why? Because you guys got preferred over me. So I will simply just hate you for whatever you are and whatever you do for the rest of my life. And I'll get all of my people, all of my jinn followers will hate you for the same reason. So jinns possess because of that. Just a simple hatred, and it goes back to that period. There's also, this is crazy, but honestly, some jinns have this kind of lust or attraction, or love to human beings. I mean, there's like hundreds of stories like this where jinns that just find you, mashallah, tabarakallah.
So the jinn falls in love with you.
The jinn just falls in love with you.
Man.
So it clearly shows that we have a lot that they would want from us. They don't have anything we want, but it's actually the opposite way.
And there's male and female jinn.
Absolutely, there's males and female jinns.
And so the female jinn might see a guy and say, oh, mashallah.
Yeah, mashallah, tabarakallah, and she'll just want to be close to him.
Wow.
Because remember, Allah calls their whole supernatural world a nation by itself. So they have their own feelings, their own marriages, schools, scholars, they have all of this.
Wow.
It's a separate world, though.
But we also know that there are, I guess, quote unquote, good jinn. right? Amongst the nations of jinns, there are jinns that are Muslim.
Yeah.
There are jinns that are other religions as well. So who is it that particularly would be looking to cause harms to, insan, like the humans?
Well, this is the bad jinn that we're talking about, right? So the interesting thing about that is the good jinns, they just worship Allah. They do what they're created to do. They don't have any care for human beings. They just don't care about what we do. They'll mind their own business. So it's really the bad jinn. I mean, one other reason why they may want to possess is to avenge something that you might have done to them, even if it's just unconsciously you weren't aware.
Even a Muslim jinn?
Even a Muslim jinn as well.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day, they are Muslim, but they still are inclined to do evil. They still want to get back. They still want to make revenge. Why? Because you might have done something really silly and you've caused harm to one of them and you didn't know you've done that. So they come back and they possess you. And there's even another reason, which is actually one of the most common ones, which is absolutely no reason, just simply because they want to.
Just for fun.
Just for fun, because they can.
Okay, so can you look at someone and come up with an estimated understanding to say, like, this person is possessed?
Look, you can look at somebody who's qualified to do this, by the way. You can look at somebody and there are key features about that individual, even sort of behaviors that you can say, yes, this person is possessed.
Because I see people all the time, like, especially downtown, like, some people that are maybe on drugs or something.
Yeah.
You see them and you're like, I don't know what this person's on, but there's probably something floating around in them. So that's something that you could probably tell by looking at them.
Absolutely. And it'll take more than one instance, right? So you'll literally study them for a few days or a few... whatever interactions you have, right? Few meetings with them, and you'll piece all of this stuff together. There are some really obvious signs as well. Right off the bat, you just have one sitting with them and you'll know, yeah, this person is possessed.
Like what? Outside of the, the crazy voice or something?
So one very obvious sign is a strong stench. The odor is so strong. Clearly, this person, it's not because he didn't shower. He looks like relatively a clean individual. But the odor is so strong you can't even be in the same room with them. And
what does it smell like?
It's like this gassy, fumy. It was the worst term to use because we all love barbecue, but it's got this barbecue sort of stench to it, like something is burning. But honestly, Boonaa, it is just unbearable. I've smelt this thing before. It's unbearable. You need literally a mask in your face. But even still, having said that, that person can't smell anything.
SubhanAllah.
They don't say, like, what's the problem? I don't smell nothing. That's your first sign. Okay.
And okay, if a jinn was out looking for trouble, say for instance a jinn out there that wants to possess somebody or whatever, who would be the ideal target? What type of person would they be theoretically trying to approach?
Okay, so this is actually a huge question, but it all falls under one umbrella, which is the people of weak iman. The people of weak faith are always going to be more vulnerable to possession than anyone else. And this is why many scholars, even till this day, have made this statement. At the end of the day, the guys who know this work, who do this for a living, who do exorcism, they can tell you right offhand through their own experience, 99% of the people that they're dealing with these problems essentially have weak iman. We're talking about very weak iman. They're missing prayers, they're not focused, they don't know what their purpose is, all of those things. So as a result, they do these haram things and they become comfortable with it, and jinns just come and flourish and take full advantage of it.
Now, like, obviously, I mean, I believe in jinn, I believe in the world of the unseen, and I know that they have these particular powers, but I'm also a little bit skeptical. We know that there are people who, mashallah, they wake up on the wrong side of the bed, their hair's over this way, mashallah, it's a jinn, right? They got a little bit of a cough, it's a jinn. Your kid is doing bad in school, he's a jinn. Like, everything became jinn, this, jinn, that.
Right.
How can we, as a community, stop this idea of over-diagnosing? Some scholars, I've even heard them say that jinn get blamed for everything, unfairly.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
How can we as a community also look at perhaps issues of mental health issues? Okay, some people are suffering from different diseases, whether it be schizophrenia, different personality disorders, and so on and so forth, that oftentimes gets misdiagnosed. I've heard of a case where even I think somebody suffered from epilepsy, and they would get seizures, and every time they did, the family would immediately start beating them and reading Quran on them.
Yeah, that's real common.
That's not the issue they need to be addressed. How can we, kind of come to compromise with those two ideas?
Wallahi, Boonaa, it's so ridiculously silly for somebody to even assume that any twitch, scratch, you hear a door slam in the house, all of this is about jinns. Trust me when I say to you, jinns have a lot more better things to do than to come into your house and slam doors all day, okay? They have a lot more better things to do than to twitch and scratch your knees every now and then. So these people, for one, I give them the benefit of the doubt, even though other things may cross my mind, that they just simply don't know. They don't understand the world of this jinn and how it works and what they're capable of doing as opposed to what they're not capable of doing. Part of the blame for that is that, remember, our cultures have taught us that jinns can do certain things and they do it at particular times. So a lot of it is just cultural, it's folklore, it's just traditions passed on from generation to generation.
Right.
So that's partially to blame for this. Still, having said that, what people should do is treat whatever twitch or scratch or whatever cough or sneeze or sniffle they get, treat it for what it is. It's nothing more than what it is. Why? Because as long as, well, the first reason is because all of this stuff is normal, but secondly, it's not abnormal to go through all of this, to have these sicknesses and problems. All human beings will have problems. We'll all get sick at some point. So treat your sickness for what it is. But still coming now to the second part where like serious medical illnesses, so depression, anxiety, bipolar, all of that stuff.
Right.
The best process to really figure out whether this is jinn related or not is literally go and see a doctor and get professional help. The moment, now this is a principle that scholars teach us, the moment a doctor diagnoses a problem and says you're feeling this way because of A, B, and C, you rule out jinns completely. It's completely irrelevant now. You can't say, well, still there's a possibility of jinn. No, case closed.
Right.
However, the moment the doctor says to you, you seem fine, we don't know what's wrong with you, we've done all the CAT scans and MRIs and all that stuff, we don't know what's wrong with you.
That time.
Now the door
Dun,
for
dun, dun.
yeah, that's
And
where
then
it
you know
says,
what's up.
Okay, now you know
Okay.
something is not right.
Okay, so how can we then, I mean, everybody has this like overbearing fear, you know, of like, oh my God, I'm going to get possessed. And they're so worried about this possession idea. How can we actually protect ourselves from being possessed or from coming under the influence of, I don't know if we have time to talk about specifically magic, you know, black magic in particular, but the idea of being possessed, how can we prevent that from happening to us?
Well, look, it's actually very simple, and subhanAllah, just being Muslim alone is a protection, right? Because you have access to Quran and you have access to dua. So the first thing that people can do is literally follow all the commands that they know of Islam to the max. Do as much of it as you can. The second thing that works very well is to memorize a lot of the du'as, the prophetic du'as. So the du'a for getting dressed, going to the washroom, and going to the malls, etc. Because all of these du'as aim to do this. They aim to protect you. There's a spiritual protection and even a physical protection that Allah gives you. And then the third is the most important, Boonaa, and that's Quran, Quran, Quran. Nothing is going to protect anybody more than Quran. So you can use specific verses that are related to whatever sickness you're suffering from, or just as Allah says in Quran, everything in the Quran is a shifa. Everything is a cure. So generally the Quran itself is a cure. And even if I could add, if you want to even focus on the special surahs or the more powerful surahs, so like Fatiha, Ayatul Kursi, Yasin, Falaq and Nas, these surahs, they have a specific relation to these kind of sicknesses. So this is like, can you believe, right, the narration of Abu Huraira when he meets this jinn, Iblis? Eventually, you know, this jinn was stealing from him, right? At the end of the hadith, what does Abu Huraira say? The jinn says, look, I'll tell you something that will keep shaitan away forever. So Abu Huraira says, well, what is it? It's like, recite Ayatul Kursi every night. So it literally came from the devil's mouth, one of the most powerful cures. It came from them themselves. SubhanAllah.
Okay, last point here, just a question for you. You know this idea of ayn, you know, somebody giving you ayn, evil eye. How, you know, realistic is it in the sense of like, you know, like for instance, I don't put my wife on blast or anything, but like women in general have this idea that like, you know, if I bring my kids out, you know, and they, mashallah, they put on nice clothes for them, somebody's gonna give them ayn, you know, or if you say something in public or people see you, if they know who you are, someone's gonna give you ayn. There's this like overbearing fear of somebody giving you evil eye. Can you comment on, you know, the reality of that as well?
Okay, so the reality is real. The Prophet ﷺ says that the ayn is haqq. And then the hadith concludes, and I warn you to stay away from tattoos. Now it's interesting that tattoos is mentioned in the same hadith because it represents a sort of an object or a purpose for admiration. So you at the end of the day, when you get dressed and you walk outside of your house, the point is that you take whatever precautions you can. Simply saying Bismillah is one of the greatest protective measures of ayn. But still at the bottom line, somebody may still give you ayn at the end of the day, and ayn is very, very easy to treat. It's very easy to treat. So don't assume that every case equals ayn unless you see specific signs or indications that this person is becoming sick, something is wrong with them. So you just pay attention to those particular signs. But other than that, ayn is just one of those things that's it's really common. You're very, very difficult to avoid it.
Well, Sheikh, Jazakallah khair for giving us your time. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for watching. Inshallah, stay tuned for another great episode of Hangout coming up very soon. Jazakallah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
كن سعيدا كن فريدا عش بفخر في الحياة لا تبالي فالمعالي